Good afternoon. My name is John Lentz. I'm the editorial director at City and State, and I'm pleased to welcome everyone to today's panel discussion, Preparing Governments for an AI-Driven Future, presented by City and State in partnership with KPMG. Since OpenAI launched its chatbot a little over a year ago, artificial intelligence has quickly become part of our everyday conversation. But AI has already been transforming how state and local governments operate, from delivering services more efficiently to offering new tools to combat crime and fraud, to quickly sifting through voluminous amounts of data, such as public comments or court documents. Today, we've convened an illustrious panel of city and state government leaders and industry experts for a discussion about innovations already underway and opportunities to modernize government across the board. Our panelists today are Commissioner Kevin Kim of the New York City Department of Small Business Services. He'll be joining us a little after 1:10 p.m. today due to another commitment. We also have today Josh Clem, the Chief Information Officer at the New York State Thruway Authority. Welcome, Josh. We also have joining us a little bit late today, State Senator Tracy Pennycook of Pennsylvania, who chairs the Communications and Technology Committee in that legislative house. We also have Amaya Kapayan, Chief Information Officer for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And finally, Rob Breakiron, Advisory Managing Director of KPMG. Welcome, everyone. So we only have a little bit under 45 minutes for today's discussion, so we'll jump right in. I do want to give one note to the audience. As time permits, near the end of the discussion, or perhaps throughout the discussion, we'll try to take some questions from the audience, which you can submit in writing. Down at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. Just click on that button, and you can write a question in. And again, as time permits, we'll get to a few of those during the discussion. And I'll go with that. We're waiting for a couple panelists, so I'll ask the panelists who are here to answer a few more questions up front until the rest of the panelists arrive. But first of all, if you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how your work involves the use of AI. And Amaya, let's start with you.
Sure. Hi, so I am new to the Commonwealth and also new to the public sector. So I have a career in the private sector leading digital transformation, most recently at Comcast, where I was there for 7 years, building a best-in-class native application for Comcast 30 million customers to manage their relationship and service with Comcast. But now I've launched into this public sector space, really excited to be here, and the scale and scope of impact that technology organizations like mine can have on millions of residents every day. Very excited to talk about AI, especially generative AI today, as just such a powerful tool that we can engage with responsibly to deliver that impact. Excited to be here.
Mm-hmm. And let's dig into that a little bit right away here. It's an exciting time, for this technology. Also in Pennsylvania, there's recently this executive order from the governor. If you could just talk a little bit about the ways artificial intelligence is being utilized in government at this moment, and the particulars in Pennsylvania and what they're doing on this front.
Sure. Obviously, I think most of us are familiar with artificial intelligence is a very broad term, right? It encompasses many different flavors of technology, and right now today there's relatively limited instances of active use across the Commonwealth. Maybe more in the machine learning realm of things that are embedded in some of the tools that we use from providers. But I think what I'm excited to really focus on today is generative AI, because I think that's where a lot of what's been happening for probably over a decade, just in the realm of AI, is really exploding, because the ways that people can interact with the technology are becoming much more accessible. So so I think the path really are the impact of AI on our team and our workforce and our eventually our residents is all ahead of us.
Sure. And we may be able to circle back to talk a little bit more about the governor's executive order later on in discussion. So we can hold on that. Let's go over to Josh Clem. Again, if you can tell the audience about yourself a little bit, your interactions with AI, and then also go into how it's being used currently in New York, in your case.
Sure, absolutely. Josh Clem, CIO at the New York State Thruway Authority. I think Maya brought up a great point, which is a lot of times things that are AI or labeled AI for marketing purposes are ultimately machine learning or other tools being branded very creatively. That said, in the state of New York, we've leaned in heavily to leveraging AI and ML solutions. The Thruway has been a longtime proponent of ML through ALPR, which is one of the ways that we enact cashless tolling. Additionally, we leverage it for surveillance purposes on critical infrastructure and anomaly detection through various machine learning algorithms that detect behaviors that are potentially hazardous to motorists. We've recently invested in intelligent document processing, which is a human-in-the-loop AI process, which has been a significant time saver for some of our fiscal partners. And most recently, our development team has leaned very heavily into generative AI as it pertains to code documentation or business documentation for legacy code that the architects of are no longer with us, and we've got to figure out why they made the decisions they made and how these things interplay with one another, as well as the code rewrites themselves. It's never perfect, but it's assuredly a good foundation for us to start on and lean into. And at the Thruway, we're very much so embracing AI and trying to find ways that we can use it to advance the business.
Great. Thank you, Josh. And let's go over to Rob, who is the industry expert we have on the panel, can provide that perspective apart from government. Again, if you can just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you do with AI, and ways you see it being used already in government, and maybe beyond just New York and Pennsylvania, if that's
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, everybody, my name is Rob Breaker, and I'm a technology leader for KPMG, focusing mostly on government and education across the whole U.S. But I live on the East Coast, and I have a big affinity for all my clients on the East Coast. In my capacity as a tech leader, I support a wide range of services. That's everything from strategy to implementation. But to be honest, over the last 6 months, it's more and more become about Gen AI, and broadly seems to be the topic of the day, right? So there's a lot of things we're starting to see in AI, and I think very similar to what you brought up, Josh, right? Gen AI is being used to relaunch a lot of use cases and services or ideas around, I would call traditional AI or automation or things, frankly, sometimes are not even AI based, right? But we welcome it because it is really doubling down on the ability to technology to bring increased services for our customers, our constituents, our citizens. So that's been very useful. Some of the things where we're seeing most of the use right now, again, this is really just starting. It's only been about a year, but think anything that is automation, highly sensitive to repetitive tasks, processes. So we're seeing a lot of analysis and prediction, language translation, text summarization, code development. Josh, you talked a little bit about that. Any automation of reports or insights from those reports. Knowledge management has become an area that's rapidly increasing. So really anything that is on that repetitive spot is where I think AI is very much doubling down its capacity and use for all of us.
So great. Thanks, Rob. And I might want to go back to a little bit. Again, if you could elaborate a little more on this executive order from the governor in Pennsylvania, kind of what that entails. We'll hear later about another big announcement in New York City in the past year, but these seem, kind of two of the big governmental announcements on like, hey, we're gonna take this seriously, we're gonna harness this. So anyway, what can you explain about what that executive order includes and the scope of it?
Sure, absolutely. I think it's because, as we've all been saying, Gen AI really has kicked up, the scale of change to something that's seismic. We knew we had to make sure that we were engaging with this new technology in a proactive way, not a reactive way. So, the executive order is a response to the fact that, as I mentioned in the speech that I gave at that occasion, over half the world's population has engaged with generative AI, right? I think we all know the stats about the fastest technology to reach 100 million active users, right? It's everywhere, and the power of it is unparalleled. So, I think we all know that in government there's a huge opportunity to make technology work harder on behalf of the impact that we're trying to achieve. So the executive order kind of had three parts to it. Number one, governance and policy, because we want to make sure, I don't know that anyone really has this figured out yet, private or public sector, right? But we also know that sometimes in government, we lean too hard on the policy and the regulation, right? So this is a tough one. Everyone's figuring it out. We've had the benefit since we launched our executive order of the White House also providing that guidance, and we just saw in Europe that they also came forward, right? But we wanted to establish those, principles around which and how we would approach use of AI in the Commonwealth. The second is also education, right? We are all learning about Gen AI, whether we're technical practitioners or we're just a resident that's maybe seeing that we can write an email faster, right? So training not only those practitioners, but our broader base of 80,000 employees, helping them understand, just like we do with cybersecurity, what is this technology thing about, and what should I know about it? The third pillar is, as I said, we are all globally learning about how this new technology is going to change our lives. So the third pillar was, how do we engage with folks that are experts and are at the frontier of this? So we started with partnerships. We did the executive order at Carnegie Mellon. They're one of the preeminent, institutions, educational institutions on AI in general and generative AI. So they are, our partners. We're figuring out exactly the engagement model, but they're there to help us learn. Penn State is a second educational partner that we also have cemented a relationship with. And we also plan to take that into the private sector. What are those private sector partners that can be our advisors and help us learn as they learn? Last piece is, we launched a governing body, governance board with representatives across both the Commonwealth, but a few stakeholders like labor are key stakeholders. They want to understand how this might impact, union members' jobs, right? So taking an approach of taking it head on, setting up a structure. And the next piece that you'll hear about early in the year is, how are we learning by doing? How are we piloting and understanding, where those high impact and hopefully lower risk use cases are, like the one that Josh shared. So that's a quick overview of the EO and our approach and what we've been up to in the Commonwealth.
Great, thank you, Maya. And following up on that last point, as a segue over to you, Josh. Beforehand, we were talking about the idea of like augmentation. I think, as Maya was alluding to, there are concerns in the public sector workforce and in the workforce at large about, is AI coming for my job? Is AI going to just eliminate all these jobs? How is it from your perspective, and to what degree is AI a tool that workers can use to make their jobs easier?
Well, I think I'd certainly agree with the latter part of that sentiment, right? It's a tool. AI is a tool, just like, a backhoe. We're a roadway, so I go to heavy machinery quickly. A backhoe is a tool that we have to use and use safely and use correctly. We can't apply it to everything. And I would say, for folks in the public sector, particularly in the IT space, I don't think there is a significant concern around AI coming for our jobs. Any public sector entity will tell you quickly and repeatedly, one of the biggest challenges we face is hiring. We have open jobs. We'd love to bring more staff in. Every forum I get, I take an opportunity to try and recruit and bolster our workforce. So it's quite antithetical. We want to make sure that we are as efficient and effective as possible with the parties that are willing to come join our team, and want to give them the right tools to succeed. And so when we're down staffed, these Gen AI tools are helping our developers be more productive. And I don't see them as tools that are going to replace or supplant a job, but instead make the job more efficient for the parties who are willing to come in and have that public service ethos, who want to do good work for the state of New York. So it's a tool. We certainly don't see there being an opportunity, at least of the current state technology, for Gen AI to replace workers. Instead, we want it to be a tool that those workers use to have better job satisfaction while they're there.
Certainly. Moving forward, then, I mean, I'm no expert on AI myself, but I like to think about futuristic things. In the future, will be flying cars that or driving flying cars, or living on the moon or living on Mars or things like that. But where do you think we could realistically be in a few years, in 10 years? What's kind of the gee whiz, like with AI eventually, like we could be doing this, we could be doing that. If you're willing to venture kind of a prediction about what are some of the really fascinating things that we're just starting to think about that we could be doing, with our lifetimes with AI in government. And maybe Amaya, if you had any thoughts on that front?
I think I can't, say with any certainty that I have any real knowledge of what's ahead, like any of us. But I do think that, there's very clear trends emerging. I think, Rob mentioned the knowledge base point. I think what's really compelling is just the ability, just the way, we've all become so used to Googling things or using Wikipedia as a resource to educate ourselves on things, that knowledge base, and then also layer on top of that the fact that there's translation capabilities, that you can tune that content to a fourth grade reading level or someone with a particular background. I think that is seismic. And when you think about government service delivery, that is something that, to Josh's point, please call us when we have like too many people working for us. Like it's I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime. So we believe that it's such a job enhancer too, right? And so how can we, when I think about our PA.gov website, which we're working on, revitalizing, overhauling, how can we build that once and then add AI on top of it to supercharge it and make it accessible to anyone that comes to it? That's a really compelling, exciting thing to think about.
Got it. Thanks. We'll circle back to that question. I do want to welcome Commissioner Kevin Kim of the New York City Department of Small Business Services. Thanks for joining us. And we'll get you caught up here. Basically, if you could start off, Commissioner, tell the audience a little bit about yourself, how your work involves AI, and then in what ways is artificial intelligence being utilized in government right now? So over to you, Commissioner.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, John, and thank you for having me on today. I am the Commissioner of the New York City Department of Small Business Services. We have approximately 300 plus staffers here. We have 4 main divisions that we manage. One of them is the business services, which most people think about when you think about an agency that's small business services. You think about helping a business start, operate, and grow. And that includes helping businesses get access to capital and also to navigate government regulations. And then we have another division that focuses on the minority women business-owned enterprises, the MWBEs. Our agency certifies the over 10,000 New York City MWBEs and then helps them contract with government agencies. We have another agency, and this is something that most people don't know about our agency. We actually manage the 18 Workforce One centers around the city. So that division helps connect an average New Yorker who's just looking to get a job or get training, free training in tech or healthcare, or get a commercial driver's license, we will connect over 23,000 New Yorkers to jobs every year, good paying jobs between $19 to $25. And then our final major division is the one that manages the business improvement districts in New York City. We have over 76 of them, and the commercial quarters that they represent. So having done all that, one of the exciting things that we've been involved with is having the nation's first ever AI chatbot for businesses. We were able to create a My City portal. This is something that Mayor Eric Adams promised and has delivered on, about having a one-stop shop area site to be able to have people come in and interact with government agencies. And then within the My City portal, we have a business site that is the first ever in the country to try this. And so in that chatbot that we rolled out 2 months ago, a business owner can come on 24/7. You won't be put on hold ever in a city that never sleeps. You can just go on and say, for example, how do I open a restaurant? And on that one site, the chatbot will come out and be able to give you that answer. Now, the key part of this, though, is that we wanted to make sure it was responsible AI and that we didn't open it up to the entire universe of what happens and the concern about fake news and whatnot with AI. We did it with our 2,000 business websites, and it's an enclosed universe so that we can control the content. But it's in its baby infancy steps right now, and we're continuing to teach it. It does it in 10 different languages at the moment, and we hope to get it out to even more.
Right. I think you just had a phase 2 launch with expanding that to 10 languages. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, that was the phase 2 launch that just got done this past week, and now it expands to 10 languages. Now, it does it in all the other languages too, but those languages are just machine translated. But these 10 have been also checked by humans and really updated so that in the 10 most spoken languages, you'll find that it's a lot more accurate at this point.
And that fits with what Amaya over in Pennsylvania was just saying about translation could be a really revolutionary aspect to this in the years ahead. Commissioner, because you came on a little late, I'll stick with you a little bit longer. If you could also talk a little more broadly about that AI action plan that you mentioned. What else does it entail? What's kind of the scope of that?
Absolutely. So the mayor wanted to ensure that we created an AI action plan that had 37 actions detailed in it. And we didn't want to wait, because I think what happens with a lot of government is that there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of fear, and you don't want to get something wrong. And so oftentimes that's what contributes to what the average person might see as a bureaucratic logjam. And we wanted to make sure that we moved at some point slowly, but that we actually started taking action. And so those 37 actions that are detailed in the plan, we said that either 29 of those 37 actions will either start or be completed within the next 18 months. And so the AI action plan includes a focus on fostering external engagement. I think that's really important because government shouldn't consider that it knows it all. It does have to bring in the experts. It also has to test it with real small business owner user experience type case models. And then we really are focused on building knowledge and skill capacity in city government as well. We wanted to deploy AI pilot programs, which we did with this business chatbot. But at the same time, we have the health department and NYPD and other departments also doing a number of different programs that they're about to launch. And then we want to develop systems to detect potential risks. And so these are all part of his action plan. And I think it's comprehensive. But the key thing is that we wanted to move. We didn't want to just stagnate and wait for the right answers to all be apparent to everybody.
Certainly. Okay, and then I'll open it up again. Again, Amaya had answered my question about, what's kind of the Gwiz use of AI in the next, few years or 10 years, whatever it may be. We'll start Josh or Rob. Any thoughts there? While I give Commissioner a minute to get his thoughts together.
Yeah, I can
Josh,
go,
we'll go with you first.
I guess I'll go. I'm off mute, then I'll toss it over to you, Josh. So, I'll stay away from maybe some of those revolutionary predictors that everybody wants to hear about. But I do want to double down on what Amaya was sharing. So I think if we think about the increase or the reduction of the burden of our employees, of our citizens for those mundane, repetitive manual tasks, and we free up their time to do more value add, more meaningful work, I think that in and of itself is transformational, right? So, coupled with that, I think you asked a question in there about, what the job replacement is. This, fearful? Should our employees be fearful? I don't think that's the case, right? These historical tech disruptions that we've seen, AI did this a decade ago. Everybody's going to be get their job automated. That didn't turn out to be true. We actually did a recent survey. It shows about 2/3 of government and executives in the U.S. actually plan on using this to add jobs. So we think that's a good thing. Obviously, you have to find the people. You have to train and upskill your workforce as they come in. But maybe that's not revolutionary enough for you. But if we really can do some of that, the manual, repetitive, and replace all of that, I think you're going to get better engagement, better citizen, better customer experience. You're going to have more meaningful careers. I think you're going to have the ability to attract and retain your top talent. So I think that's important.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Josh, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with Rob as it pertains to, esoteric proclamations. I'm going to be a little more reserved, but I'll say some of the things we spoke to are exactly what we're experiencing, right? I mentioned intelligent document processing at the onset. That is very much so freeing up time of our accounts payable team, right? Processing invoices were a major roadway. We have thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of invoices that come in annually. It's an incredible accelerant as to how quickly we can process those, which in turn spurs commerce. It gets vendors paid faster, but also frees up the time, energy, mental bandwidth of the folks in that team to do the work that they need to do, the value add work, and less of the processing and procedural work that's rote and ripe for automation. So I think we'll see a significant increase in the ability for public sector to do value add functions. If you look at the provisioning of entitlements to citizens and constituents, you'll quickly see that there's a need for integrated eligibility systems. And I see AI as a cornerstone of how those succeed in the future. The nuances and rules are complex. Coming from a public sector healthcare background, I can speak to that intimately. And the opportunity in that space, as these tools mature, is significant to making sure when citizens apply for services, they're applying for all of the services they are entitled to receive at one time, and that authorization and review is done holistically and completely. I think that's a big next step for public sector.
Mm-hmm. That's a great thought. I hadn't connected those dots. Commissioner Kim, over to you. Any thoughts on, hey, if this chat function you guys have works well, like what's next on the horizon, or where could we be in 5 or 10 years? I'd also throw in there, 311 in New York City seems like a great service for New Yorkers. Is that the kind of thing that could be like adapted or integrated to AI usage years down the road?
Well, I don't even think you have to wait years. It's moving so rapidly. And I think many people saw the article in the New York Times a couple of days ago about the European Union, for example. They came up with a framework for AI, which some people thought would be future-proof. And that was only a couple of years ago. And I don't think it even gets implemented till 2025. And then everyone says, well, then came ChatGPT, and just it's probably no longer even relevant. So as fast as it's moving, in terms of AI usage and what we can do as a city, I think it'll be a lot sooner. It could be within the next 12 months, even 18 months. But with 311, as you point out, that's part of what we're trying to do with our business site, is that we already have a hotline at SBS that people called, and it was used very often during the pandemic, for example. And the number of calls we were able to process was staggering, and it was impressive. On the other hand, when you have something of an AI function running this kind of hotline, it can be supplemental to what we do between 9 and 5. As I mentioned, in a city that never sleeps, just to be able to get information real time, not be put on hold, and not have to go jumping from website to website, that it can all be in one stop shop kind of a format. I mean, that's where I think AI is going to be very supplemental to all the services that we do, and not necessarily the fear of replacing everybody's jobs. I think you'll always still need a very analytical group of human beings to be able to support the work that gets done. And even in the case of translation, we find that when you rely on Google Translate, for example, or any kind of machine-based translation at this time, it's not as good as if we were to get a community-based organization that works with a particular community involved in helping with the translation. So we're very bullish on all the things that AI can do to help productivity in terms of government services. But at the same time, I think, as I mentioned earlier, we want to be wary of moving forward, but moving in a responsible step-by-step manner, so that the negative impacts of biases that can go into sometimes the information, that if it's not completely clean, that goes in and creates garbage in, garbage out, right? That kind of a danger is always a concern. But we are very, very positive, very, very hopeful and optimistic that AI will start improving city services immediately.
Well, following up with that last point, thank you, Commissioner. I guess what is the right pace here? Because again, this is this remarkable new opportunity, and it has, you all described the benefits and then the cost savings and the augmentation for workers. How do you figure out what's the right pace to go? Apart from just the regulation piece, like within your own work, how do you not go too slow and be, the government that's stale and, old fashioned, but not go too fast and risk, a lot of flaws and problems that you don't anticipate.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
anyone
why
can.
oh, sorry. Yeah. So I think for us, I think the AI action plan sets forth clear pilot programs and pilot program initiatives, so that I think those are very learning moments, teachable moments for us. And so for this business site, we're seeing the demand that's out there, though. In the past 2 months that we've launched, we've had 8,000 unique visitors who've come in and asked on average 3.4 questions to the AI chatbot. So we know it's already helping people, and that the demand is there. And some people, probably most of the younger generation, are just a lot more comfortable going online anyway and then talking to a person. So, the steps that we'll take will also be determined a lot by what the demand is out there from the public.
Anyone else want to jump in on that one, or we can move on to?
This is Josh. Yes, I would echo Commissioner Kim's sentiment there. The pace at which you move ahead is the pace at which natural adoption occurs, at least within an organization. We can espouse the values and the contributions it can make to the team, to our staff, but if other parties aren't ready to adopt the technology yet or deploy the technology yet, we certainly don't want to force it on them. And additionally, we've got to understand there are limitations today, right? There are hallucinations. Not all of the information is always curated in a fashion that would align with your business model. We encourage folks to look at Gen AI like a junior staffer. They are going to do things that impress you. They're going to do things where you're going to have to do a good bit of course correction for them, but ultimately they're going to produce value for the team. And if you approach it under those auspices, then you can find value. But if the customers aren't ready for the adoption, you have to kind of meet them where they are today, let them go on that journey on their own pace.
The only thing I'll add on is, I think to the how do we move fast, maybe not too fast. I think the line in the sand we drew with the executive order is that we're really focused on our workforce first. We absolutely know there's so many, we talked about the chatbots, et cetera. There's a lot out there, but we want to start with the 80,000 folks that we employ, because it's a huge opportunity. Said time and time again, this is about how can this be a job enhancer, not a job replacer, right? So that's the first thing. But I think, to echo everyone else's sentiment here, we're trying to learn by doing. One of the key things we've done is, in tandem with the executive order, we published a public facing website. kind of announce that internally, and included in that is a mechanism to collect, what are use cases that you've been experimenting with, thinking about, and we've got, a significant amount of feedback so far. And we're now taking that into account as we plan, for our action plan, just like Commissioner was stating on, how we'll roll out a pilot to really engage the workforce and find those valuable use cases.
Great, thank you, Maya. We have about 10 minutes left. I want to one question over to Rob. Save a little time if Senator Penny Cook from Pennsylvania does hop on, a question or two for her. And then in the absence of that, we'll go to some audience questions. But Rob, we've heard a lot about, the government side of this. What does this all mean from a private sector perspective?
Strangely, it's more of the same, right? And this is one of the technologies that I don't think government is waiting for commercial to figure it out and do it, right? The technology is so available and, I guess, quote, easy to adopt. That's a double-edged sword. By nature, we're seeing a lot of the same use cases, right? It's the same things that we brought up today. Maybe back in the last question, I think one thing I think is worth adding, because we've seen a lot of different states approach this from different perspectives over time. As far as adopting AI, we do caution organizations, states, agencies with going too slow. In this case, we see a lot of, there's potential significant risk out there because it is so easy to freely download and use your own advisory, chat GPT, whatever you want to call it. It's actually really easy to do. And we're starting to see a number of issues and concerns around that. I think the first step that a lot of people are worried about is the tech angle. Really, the first step is really where Josh, Commissioner, and Amaya have talked about. It's about identifying use cases. It's building something small and starting, testing out your use cases, testing out your guardrails, your framework, your policies, all of the things from procurement all the way to adoption. Those really need to be tested out, and that can get started today, right? Gen AI is not too uniquely different from AI that we've been purchasing for years, right? So look at how to augment that and get started. I will caution you, and we saw this a lot more maybe 6 months ago, we're not touching Gen AI. And I think that's not a good approach. It's coming, whether you like it or not, right? You don't have to specifically go out and build your own or adopt a large language model. If you own enterprise technology, the next version that you're going to get on your desktops is coming with these capabilities. So you need to figure out how to use it, right? So we do suggest organizations start and get started with that framework, policy, guardrails. Every state agency represented here already has those policies out. We're seeing about 50% of government agencies have one for those that haven't started.
Got it. Great. Okay, I will, I think we have about 7 minutes left. We'll go to some audience questions. The first audience question for Amaya and Josh: how are you thinking about data privacy within LLM use cases for these tools, i.e. state employees using chatbots like ChatGPT for summarizations, thereby inputting PII in those models? I don't know what those acronyms are, and I'm not sure if you do, but any initial reaction to that question?
Yeah, this is Josh. I was a former CISO, so that was one of my actual first concerns was from a data loss prevention perspective, what can we do to control the access and control the data that leaks out from our environment? Ultimately, your acceptable use policies still matter. They still come into play. The thing that's changed is what Rob mentioned, which is the accessibility and availability of the tool, right? Normally, you don't put into an end user's hand a tool that could quickly and efficiently leak out significant information about the organization. So working with our staff members to ensure that the folks who need or want access to the tools have access, but also understand the acceptable use of those tools has proven to be a pretty effective way for us to govern and also use it as an educational moment so they're aware of unintended consequences of the actions they take with those tools.
Yeah, I'll just add in, of course, data is what powers, not only our digital experiences, but also AI and generative AI, right? So it's critically important. So I'll just agree with Josh that, our policies around data protection are the same policies. We just have a more powerful tool right now. I think, I'll go to the education point, right? We have to really help employees understand, when you use PII in a public facing model, that becomes part of essentially the brain of that model, right? So we have to be careful. So there's basic education that we start with. Again, this is another reason why we're focused on workforce, so we can engage the group that's, in these pilots, and we can ensure that they're well trained, and we can, address anything that comes up as we test our way into this. So I think, but that's also where so much of the opportunity is, right? Using and getting through data more effectively. There are many opportunities ahead there, right? That I think we're probably having same conversations about, people using digital tools to access sensitive data like 10 years ago, right? Again, I think we're all on the same page here about leading with the education, and testing in small ways before we scale things up, so we ensure we do things responsibly.
Got it. Thank you. Another question from the audience. Can you talk a little bit about how generative AI would factor into workplace policies for accountability and sourcing resource information portals? With whom would the buck stop if the chatbot generates responses that are misleading? If anyone wants to tackle that one.
Josh, I think you actually already answered this, right? We say this is like your most junior employee that really that is really smart in some instances and maybe not too smart in others. You have to keep the people in the loop. Think about this as a tool in which current employees that know how to answer what you just brought up, this enables them to get to the answer faster, to check something. It's moving from writer to editor in some cases. But I don't think we will get to, we're not yet ready for the position of what the question asked of how do you transfer that responsibility if the tool writes it. We're not suggesting that, and I don't think anybody would. Now, there are a lot of prognostications out there. I think people think that's coming. I don't yet go that far, right? I think it's a tool in the loop.
Got it. A very specific question for Josh on the use of generative AI for your accounts payable department. What tool did you use, and was it free and useful for beginners?
Yeah, not to plug any one particular vendor, but it's a UiPath product, and it's quite literally called intelligent document processing. Not free, but very cost effective. The public sector is using it. I assure you, it's not too expensive.
Got it. We have another procurement question. In any of your experience before procuring and going live with a Gen AI tool, can an agency hire a third party to conduct a bias review? If so, do the third parties offer indemnification if their bias review gets challenged in a discrimination suit? It's a little specific. If anyone's able to speak to that.
Maybe it's one of those third parties that people come to us often and ask that question, right? While that's a detailed case, we do look at bias of technology, right? There's a couple different elements you need to look at: fairness, transparency, explainability, accountability, integrity, reliability, security, safety, privacy, IP protection. The list goes on. There are frameworks for doing that. That is not Gen AI specific, that a lot of third parties have taken and have frameworks for assessing that. I think it is important. Commissioner, you really talked about this, of the idea of building it safely, correctly, so you build a trustable system from the start. I think it is important, either through a third party or doing it yourself, that you laser focus on building that reliable, trustable source, and that's critical.
Great. Thank you, Rob. And that's a good note to close on. We're almost at time. I'd like to thank our audience for tuning in. I'd like to thank our panelists for a great conversation. I'd like to thank our partner, KPMG, who worked with City and State on this. Thank you, everyone. And this concludes our program.